Imagine the sound of a harbor at night, not the postcard version, the real one, rope groaning against wet iron, water slapping the pilings in a slow, patient rhythm, the distant moan of a ship's horn out in the black, and closer, the hiss of a diesel lamp at the end of the pier. The air is thick enough to taste salt, engine oil, and the cold, wet weight of fog rolling in off the water. It is Hong Kong, the autumn of 1971, nearly midnight on a working pier in Kowloon. 7 men are out here. 6 are dock workers, sitting on crates, smoking, waiting on a shipment that may not come before dawn. And the 7th is a small man in a dark fitted jacket, walking alone along the edge of the water. No more than 135 pounds, unhurried, hands empty except for one thing. A short length of coiled rope held loosely in his left hand, the kind a man picks up off a dock without thinking. You would look at this man and see nothing. A clerk, a visitor who took a wrong turn, someone's son walking home late. And that is exactly the mistake that the largest man on that pier was about to make. Because this is a story about the difference between a man who has spent his life lifting weight and a man who has spent his life understanding it. And it all turns on one small detail I need you to watch, because it is going to become our dagger. The quiet thing that tells you everything the giant could not see. Look at the rope in his left hand. Slack, loose, hanging. Remember that, because in 9 seconds it is going to pass through a storm, and it is never once going to pull tight. The giant's name was Fat-shing, and on that waterfront they called him Iron. 6 feet 4 inches, 270 pounds, not the sculpted, mirror-built weight of a gymnasium. The other kind. The kind that comes from 20 years of putting your hands under things that were never meant to be lifted by hand, and lifting them anyway. His forearms were thick as mooring lines. He could shoulder a crate that 3 men together would leave sitting, and in Lowe's world, that was the only ranking system that had ever existed. There were men who could move weight, and men who could not, and everything else, every clever word, every fine jacket, was decoration on top of that one hard fact. He had been challenged twice in 20 years on that pier. Nobody had ever challenged him a third time. He watched the small man walk for about 30 seconds. Then he stood up off his crate, and the other 5 went quiet, the way men go quiet when they have seen a thing begin before. He stepped into the middle of the pier and stopped, and the small man's path simply ended in a wall of shoulders. You are lost. It was not a question. His voice came out flat and heavy and carried down the whole length of the wet concrete. This is a working pier, not a place for a boy playing dress-up. He looked the jacket up and down and let a slow, ugly smile happen. I have heard about you, the one from the films, the one who kicks and shouts for the camera. Tell me something. When they film you, how many men do they need to hold the other fellow still? Behind him, one of the dock workers laughed. It stopped very quickly, on its own, and nobody joined it. Bruce Lee did not answer. He did not step back. He did not step around. He simply stood where the wall had appeared, looking up at it, breathing evenly, the rope hanging loose from his left hand. And that silence did something to Fat-shing that no insult in the world could have done. It made him uncertain, because Iron Low had spent 20 years reading one specific thing in other men, and reading it faster than anyone. The moment a man decides he does not want this, it arrives in the eyes half a second before it arrives anywhere else, and once you have seen it 1,000 times, you simply feel it happen. Every man who had ever stood where this one was standing had given it to him. This one was giving him nothing, not defiance. Defiance he understood. Defiance was just fear standing up straight. This was worse. This was a man for whom the question had apparently not even come up. Now, before we find out what Fat-shing did next, I want you to do one small thing for me, and it will take you 4 seconds. Look at that rope. hanging loose in his left hand, right there in front of a man who could break a mooring post. Somewhere in the next 9 seconds, one of these two men already knows how this ends. Write the second down in the comments. Just the number. I read every single one of them, and I want to see how many of you catch it before he moves. Now, back to the pier. Ask yourself, what does a man like Lo do when his weight finds nothing to press against? He stops talking. He uses the weight. He reached out. And you have to understand what that means for a man built the way he was built, because it was not a punch. Lo Fat-shing had almost certainly never thrown a proper punch in his life, and had never once needed to. He reached, one enormous hand coming forward and slightly down, open, going for the front of Bruce Lee's jacket, exactly the way it went for the corner of a crate. Get hold of it. Once you have hold of it, everything after that is just arithmetic. Lift, turn, and put it where you want it. 20 years. It had never failed, and here is where every instinct, a smaller man has screams one single word. Back. Get out of reach. Do not let that hand close. Bruce Lee stepped forward, into it, under the reach, inside the arm, into the exact space where 270 pounds of lifting strength becomes a set of folded, crowded levers with nothing to pull against. It was the last direction on earth that Lo Fat-shing was prepared for, because in 20 years of reaching for things, nothing had ever come toward him. Watch the rope, still hanging, still slack, because while Lo had been pouring 20 years of certainty forward into one grab, Bruce had been doing something the giant had no way to perceive. He had been reading, the shift of the weight onto the front foot, the shoulder committing a fraction of a second before the arm, the hand opening too early, the small, honest tell of a man who has never in his life needed to disguise his intention. Lo believed he was closing his hand on a jacket. He had already stepped into something that was built entirely out of his own 20 years. And then, between one slap of the water against the pilings and the next, the 9 seconds happened. Bruce's right hand rose, and it did not rise like a punch. There was no wind-up for the eye to find. It simply was not there, and then it was. One short, exact strike into the soft channel on the inside of the giant's extended arm, the place where the nerve runs shallow under the skin, the body's own electrical line. And in the same motion, his foot found Lo's lead ankle, the single pillar, carrying all that committed forward weight, and took it out from underneath him. The effect was total. The hand that had never failed to close simply opened, the fingers springing wide against their owner's will, the instruction to grip cut somewhere on its way down the arm, and the leg that carried everything was gone. 270 pounds of patient, unstoppable lifting strength, stripped of its grip and its base in the same fraction of a second, discovered that there was nothing left in the world to hold on to. Iron Lo went down, not thrown, not slammed. He simply fell, the way a crane falls when the ground under it opens. And Bruce Lee did not stand back and let it happen. His left hand came up, the one with the rope still hanging from it, and caught the giant's shoulder on the way down, not to help him, to steer him, because a man that size falling backward on wet concrete beside open water goes into the harbor, or goes head first into an iron cleat, and Bruce put him down flat on the pier instead, on his back, safe. And then the silence came, not the ordinary kind, the other kind. 6 men on crates with cigarettes burning down toward their fingers, and not one of them able to make a sound, because their eyes had already finished, and their minds had not started. Somewhere out in the fog, a ship's horn went, long and low, and nobody heard it. If your chest just tightened right there, if you felt that pier go quiet, then you already understand what this channel is. 1 second, right now. Hit subscribe. That single tap is what lets us keep telling the stories that never made it into the books. And stay with me, because what Bruce Lee did in the next 30 seconds is the part that the 6 men on that pier actually argued about for the rest of their lives. He crouched down beside the giant. Fat-shing was staring straight up into the fog. His arm would not answer him. His chest was moving hard. Not from effort. 9 seconds is not effort. From something considerably worse. From the collapse of the only law he had. The law that said the man who can lift more wins. It had held for 20 years on that pier. It had just been taken apart, without anger, without cruelty, by someone half his size who was not even breathing quickly. And Bruce Lee's voice, when it came, was quiet, and there was nothing in it that the 6 men were expecting. That was not strength. You have more strength than I will ever have. What you do not have is a moment when you are not holding on. He let that sit. 20 years you have practiced closing your hand. Tonight you needed to open it, and your hand did not know how. That is all that happened here. Then Bruce Lee stood up, and he put out his hand. And this is the part they argued about, because Fat-shing did not take it. Not at first. He lay there on the wet concrete, looking up at the small man against the fog. And what was moving behind his eyes was not rage. It was something much rawer than rage. The specific vertigo of a man discovering that the floor he has stood on his entire life was never a floor. And then, slowly, the giant reached up with the arm that still worked, and 135 pounds pulled 270 pounds back onto its feet. Stood there swaying slightly, working the feeling back into a dead hand, and he looked at the rope, still there, still hanging from Bruce Lee's left hand, exactly as it had hung when this began. Loose, slack, not pulled tight, not gripped, not wound once around a knuckle. That was the thing he could not stop looking at, and that was the thing that broke something open in him, because the rope was proof that the man in front of him had not strained, had not braced, had not spent 1 single ounce more than the moment actually required. Fat-shing had thrown his entire life into that one grab. His weight, his 20 years, his name on that waterfront, everything he understood about himself. And the man who stopped him had done it without closing his hand. That is what Iron Low could not defeat, and never would. He had built himself out of force, and force can always be met, outweighed, outlifted, broken. The man in front of him had built himself out of understanding, and you cannot get hold of understanding. You cannot lift it, or turn it, or put it where you want it. You can only walk into it and find out, far too late, that it was already 3 steps ahead of you. Now, before you go, if this story got to you, if you believe that real strength has never once needed to raise its voice, drop a like on this video. It costs you nothing, and it is the only thing that tells the algorithm stories like this deserve to be found. And then tell me where you stand, because I do not think this one has a clean answer. Fat-shing was not a villain. He was a man who worked 20 years on a wet pier with his hands, who was never once given a reason to doubt the only rule he had, and who was humiliated in front of the 6 men he worked beside every day of his life. Bruce Lee could have stepped around him, could have walked on into the fog and let the man keep his rule and his pier and his name. So which was it? Did Low get what arrogance earns, or did a man lose 20 years of his own certainty in 9 seconds in front of everyone he knew for the crime of being wrong about a stranger, and the hand that put him down and then pulled him back up? Was that mercy, or the harder cruelty? Whose side are you on that pier? Tell me in the comments, and tell me the second you caught it with the rope. I read every single one of them, because it is in your words that this legend of the dragon keeps living on. Be water, my friend.